Have you ever wondered what would remain of your identity if everything you believed about yourself suddenly dissolved? This question lies at the heart of a profound psychological and spiritual phenomenon known as ego death, a complete transformation of one's sense of self that has fascinated philosophers, psychologists, and spiritual seekers throughout history. Far from being a literal death, ego death represents a radical shift in consciousness where the boundaries between self and world temporarily dissolve, often leading to profound insights and personal transformation. The experience has been documented across cultures, spiritual traditions, and increasingly in scientific research, suggesting it may be a universal aspect of human consciousness with significant implications for our understanding of identity, consciousness, and personal growth. The nature of ego and its dissolution. The concept of ego spans multiple disciplines and traditions, each offering valuable perspectives on this fundamental aspect of human experience. In psychological terms, the ego represents our sense of self-identity, the I that we present to others, and how we understand our place in the world. It encompasses our self-esteem, personal identity, and the boundaries we establish between ourselves and others. In Jungian psychology, the ego serves as the bridge between our unconscious self and the way we consciously present ourselves to the world too. This construct of self, while necessary for functioning in everyday life, can also become rigid, limiting our experience and perpetuating patterns that no longer serve us. Ego death, then, refers to the temporary dissolution of this sense of separate selfhood. During this experience, the usual boundaries between self and other blur or disappear entirely, leading to a profound shift in consciousness. Importantly, as discussed in spiritual contexts, ego death does not mean the permanent annihilation of the ego structure. Rather, it represents a transformation or enlightenment of the ego, where one realizes, I am not I, but I am. A recognition that identity extends beyond the limited personal self. This dissolution of ordinary self-reference has been reported across different contexts, from intense spiritual practices to psychedelic experiences, suggesting it may be a fundamental potential of human consciousness. The process of ego dissolution can be both profoundly liberating and deeply challenging. During this experience, core beliefs about oneself are questioned, familiar self-perceptions dismantle, and attachments to who we think we are begin to loosen. This can create feelings of vulnerability, disorientation, and even fear as the constructs that have defined our identity seem to fall away. Yet this challenging process also creates space for new understanding and growth, clearing the path for a more expansive sense of identity to emerge. The temporary suspension of ordinary self-consciousness allows for a fresh perspective on one's life and place in the world, often with lasting implications for how one relates to themselves and others. Ego death and psychedelic experiences. Some of the most well-documented instances of ego dissolution occur during psychedelic experiences. Users of classical psychedelic substances such as psilocybin, LSD, and DMT frequently report a diminishment or complete dissolution of their sense of being a separate self distinct from the rest of the world. This aspect of the psychedelic experience has attracted significant scientific interest in recent years, as researchers seek to understand both the phenomenology and neurobiology of self-awareness. Scientific studies have documented that distortions in subjective experience of the self are central to the psychedelic experience. These alterations in self-awareness have been variously termed ego death, ego loss, ego disintegration, and ego dissolution in the literature. From a psychoanalytic perspective, this experience has been interpreted as a disruption of ego boundaries, resulting in a blurring of the distinction between self-representation and object representation. This disruption prevents the synthesis of self-representations into a coherent whole, temporarily altering the fundamental experience of being a continuous self. Research has progressed to the point where scientists have developed specific measures to quantify ego dissolution, such as the Ego Dissolution Inventory, EDI. Studies using this inventory have demonstrated strong correlations between ego dissolution and measures of unitive experience, suggesting that the dissolution of boundaries between self and world is closely linked to feelings of unity and connectedness. Interestingly, research has also identified a positive correlation between reported drug dose and ego dissolution experiences, indicating that higher doses of psychedelics are more likely to occasion profound alterations in self-awareness. From a neuroscientific perspective, ego dissolution during psychedelic experiences appears to result from changes in the integrated functioning of hierarchical predictive models in the brain. These models normally posit the existence of a stable and unchanging entity, the self, to which various representations are bound. When these models temporarily shift their functioning under the influence of psychedelics, the ordinary sense of being a separate self can dissolve, allowing for new perspectives on the relationship between self and world. Spiritual dimensions of ego death. Beyond psychedelic contexts, ego death has long been recognized as a significant aspect of spiritual awakening across traditions. Many spiritual paths describe a process of surrendering or transcending the limited personal self as essential to spiritual development. In these contexts, ego death represents not the end of a journey but a crucial transition toward greater wholeness and authenticity. In spiritual frameworks, ego death is often understood as a necessary step toward enlightenment or awakening. As described in contemplative traditions, when one undergoes spiritual awakening, the ego undergoes a kind of death, not in the sense of annihilation, but in the sense of transformation. The individual realizes that I am not I in the limited sense they previously understood, but rather I am in a more fundamental sense. This shift in identification from the personal ego to what some traditions call the soul or the divine within represents a profound expansion of identity beyond conventional boundaries. This spiritual perspective on ego death emphasizes that as long as the body is alive, the ego continues to function as a necessary interface with the world. However, after experiencing ego death, this ego is transformed, enlightened by the recognition that it is not the fundamental reality of who we are. The ego becomes an instrument rather than the core of identity, allowing for both effective functioning in the world and a deeper connection to something beyond the separate self. Ego death as personal transformation. Beyond specific psychedelic or spiritual contexts, the concept of ego death offers a powerful metaphor for personal transformation and growth. Throughout life, we encounter situations that challenge our self-concept and invite us to let go of outdated identities. These encounters with the limitations of our current self-understanding can initiate a process similar to ego death, where familiar aspects of identity dissolve to make way for new growth. Life transitions often catalyze this type of transformative process. Major life events such as career changes, relationship endings, health crises, or significant losses can dismantle our sense of who we are, initiating what might be understood as a form of ego death. These experiences challenge our core beliefs, dismantle familiar self-perceptions, and strip away attachments to who we think we are. While often deeply uncomfortable, such experiences create the conditions for personal rebirth and renewal. The cycle of symbolic death and rebirth reflects natural patterns of transformation. Just as seasons shift in nature, humans undergo phases of letting go, regenerating, and integrating new facets of themselves. After the letting go of old identities comes the opportunity for rebirth, rediscovering oneself from a more open and expanded perspective. This process allows for new understanding and growth that wouldn't be possible without the dissolution of previous limitations. Integration represents a crucial phase after ego death. Whether occasioned by psychedelics, spiritual practices, or life transitions, the insights gained during ego dissolution must be incorporated into everyday life to realize their full transformative potential. This integration process involves making sense of the experience, reconciling new perspectives with practical living, and embodying the expanded sense of self in relationships and activities. Psychological and therapeutic implications. The phenomenon of ego death holds significant implications for psychology and psychotherapy. As research into psychedelic-assisted therapy expands, clinicians are increasingly recognizing the therapeutic potential of carefully guided ego dissolution experiences. Studies suggest that the ego dissolution occasioned by substances like psilocybin may contribute to therapeutic outcomes in conditions ranging from depression to addiction, in part by allowing individuals to step outside rigid patterns of self-related thinking. Even outside psychedelic contexts, therapeutic approaches that help individuals loosen rigid self-concepts may facilitate healing and growth. Many psychological approaches, from mindfulness-based therapies to certain forms of depth psychology, work to create space between individuals and their limiting self-concepts, allowing for greater flexibility and new possibilities. Understanding ego death as a natural aspect of psychological transformation rather than something to be feared may help clinicians better support clients through challenging transition periods. At the same time, the intense nature of ego dissolution highlights the importance of appropriate guidance and integration support. Without adequate preparation and follow-up care, experiences of ego death, whether occasioned by psychedelics, spiritual practices, or life crises, can potentially overwhelm an individual's coping resources. This underscores the need for responsible approaches to facilitating transformative experiences and supporting the integration process that follows. Conclusion. Ego death represents one of the most profound transformations of consciousness available to human experience, offering a temporary yet potentially life-changing glimpse beyond the boundaries of ordinary identity. Whether encountered through psychedelic substances, spiritual practices, or life's natural transitions, this dissolution of the separate sense of self opens doorways to new understanding about the nature of identity and our relationship to the world around us. The exploration of ego death across scientific, spiritual, and psychological domains suggests its significance as a universal aspect of human potential. Far from representing an endpoint, ego death serves as a threshold experience, a crossing over from one way of being to another that allows for greater flexibility, wisdom, and authenticity. Through the temporary suspension of our ordinary reference points, we gain the opportunity to reconstruct our understanding of ourselves in more expansive and integrated ways. As scientific research continues to illuminate the neural and psychological mechanisms of ego dissolution, and as more people encounter these experiences through various means, our collective understanding of this phenomenon will likely deepen. This understanding may ultimately contribute to more effective approaches to mental health, spiritual growth, and the navigation of life's inevitable transitions. In the dissolution of our familiar boundaries, we may discover not an ending, but a beginning, an invitation to know ourselves and our world in fundamentally new ways.